everyone, and welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy at TV. In case you're not a subscriber yet, please do subscribe. Just press the subscribe button as well as turn on the notification bell so that you can get notifications when we upload our videos. Don't also forget to subscribe and join, follow, like our other social media platforms. Of course, you're seeing it right about now. Don't also forget to share this video across your platforms. Enjoy the video. Welcome to Moneyline with Nancy. I am Nancy Naji, and on today's edition of the program, you will be seeing something different. Why did I say something different? Of course, I'm not in my usual location here, always in the studio, as you know. But there are critical conversations that are shaping the economy as we know it now. Just a few days ago, just a few hours ago, I must say, the World Bank Nigeria office held its May 2025 Nigeria Development Update event, and yours sincerely, of course, anchored and moderated that program. What was that program talking about? It was talking about building momentum for inclusive growth. I don't have so much to say than for you to see what transpired at the program. Now, you get to see the panel discussion that was very critical. The World Bank has presented the NDU, and we had a panel session to discuss the key findings of the report as well as the recommendations, and to know what government is doing. What are the next steps by government to ensure that growth is not just growth, but growth is inclusive? How are the vulnerable being protected? So just take a listen to the panel session. That is what you will be watching because there was so much that transpired at the panel session, which I anchored. Of course, the panelists included the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun. We also had in the room the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, that's Dr. Bosun Tijani. We had the Governor of Plateau State, Governor Caleb Mutfwang. We also had the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, as well as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of USC Foods Limited. The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Atiku Bagudu, was also in the room. He made some comments. So without further ado, just take a listen to the panel session. So let me start with the Honorable Minister of Finance. The NDU, which has just been presented, underscores notable progress, and I heard applause in the room when Dr. Sainite was talking about the progress made on macroeconomic stability. The next, of course, imperative is to leverage on these to lead private sector growth. And this aligns with the central theme of the spring meetings that were just concluded, talking about jobs. As the coordinating minister of the economy, could you perhaps for me highlight some of the steps that this government is taking and currently on to build on this momentum and unlock private sector growth?
We all saw the figures. We've all seen the progress from, I think it was May 2 or so in 2023 when there were worries that the economy would even go over the edge to where we are now. And where are we now? Stability, macroeconomic stability, which needs to be safeguarded. We've heard very clearly. But the key thing is this. We saw from the red areas on the chart that there is a need still to really push for transparency of fiscal data and then also transparency in the oil revenue sector. And this is critical, this is key to what we are trying to achieve next. Just this morning, I was telling the Governor of Central Bank, the Central Bank and all the other revenue-generating agencies, fiscal agencies, budget office, accountant general's office, and so forth, we met to try to strengthen and clarify the type of data that we put out so that it is consistent, it is regularly put out, and that it is accurate. But in terms of where we go next, the key is investment. It is investment that allows increases in productivity that grows the economy, that creates jobs, high quality jobs that lift Nigerians out of poverty in their millions, which is the aim of Mr. President. So we're trying to go from 7%, or trying to go to 7% growth. And I think, building momentum, that word momentum is in this, the title of this NDU. I sense and feel the momentum from the people I met yesterday that are interested in investing in telecoms, technology, broadband access, to the people I met yesterday who are opening a plant next month that will produce lubricants, not just for the Nigerian market, but for export to West Africa, the ECOWAS market, as well as the African continental free trade area, which is also the opportunity of the time. So I sense and I feel it's anecdotal for now, but it will reflect in the figures. There's a momentum to invest in Nigeria. And finally, I must also point out that a big part of this push forward is still focus on the social safety net, focus on not leaving people behind, and every effort is being made to digitize the way in which we reach out and directly help Nigerians who are so identified for help, with biometric, unique identification of everybody that is to be paid, and then payment through a digital mechanism, either a BVN, which means you have a bank account, or a mobile wallet. So I think that, in a nutshell, is what I would say is what is being provided, offered, and is being strategized on to provide the momentum to growth based on the fact that we are achieving a significant element of macroeconomic stability. Thank you.
Let me come over to the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. What are your intended next steps, and how do you also gauge the impact on not just even businesses but people, because inflation is stubbornly high. It's still stubbornly high.
In terms of contributions that the central bank has made, I would say that clearly for any economy, you do need stability for you to be able to grow. And we recognize our role as custodians of stability. And we recognize what we have to do to ensure that we accomplish and attain stability, and we continue not just in attaining, but we continue to protect. So with that comes the need for us to be proactive, to be able to understand risks, and to be able to move before the risks overwhelm us. So that in a nutshell, I think, is putting into context how we see our role and the things we have done so far. And that is why you find that the volatility in FX rates has considerably moderated. It was about 4% about a year ago, and now it's down to less than 0.5% about. And those are all things that we will continue to ensure that we guard on jealously. Price stability, financial stability, those are very, very key areas that we ensure that we are monitoring and ensure that we get ahead of. Of course, you're absolutely right, Nancy, in your observation that inflation is still a bit sticky. Or, well, maybe less sticky now than it was before, but it's still elevated. And of course, we believe that if we continue the course of orthodox monetary policy, which you speak about, and which has brought about results, if we are able to continue the course, which we will, then over time, the inflation should moderate. And of course, with that, would go moderation in interest rates as well. So those are things that, will naturally take its course. And if you look at where we were relative to where we are now, I think those things speak for themselves. Then in terms of next steps, I think there's a need for us to, and you probably hear this statement a lot, but believe me, it's something that we need to take very seriously, and that is the need to stay the course. And from what I have seen many times, the need to stay the course in others who have been through this kind of challenge is not as easy as it sounds. It's not as easy as it sounds for so many reasons, not least of which you've mentioned some of them as well. So hopefully, as the impact of the reforms in terms of stability continue in that path, what you will see in terms of the opportunity for growth will begin to heighten, and then that will obviously trickle down to those who are the more vulnerable within our society. And of course, as you know, some of the things that the fiscal is looking at is how to make adequate transfers to the less vulnerable, to the more vulnerable, I beg your pardon. And that is something that is being strengthened. The mechanism for that is being strengthened on a regular basis. I think that in terms of the next steps also, something very important I think we need to do. We need to get the message out a lot more. And that's obviously a reflection of some of the things we have done recently. And you were with us both in Washington, and we did some things in New York as well at NASDAQ, to explain our situation, to let people know that things have moved a lot from the time many investors had lost hope and had exited. And we saw that their disposition towards the trajectory of Nigeria has been getting better and better. The numbers speak for themselves, really and truly. Like you said, we put out the net reserves figure and shown that within a year, the net reserves moved from $3 billion plus US dollars to 23. So that's a quantum leap. We've also seen the issue of you're right, with respect to our annual accounts, absolutely right. I mean, over ₦1 trillion in losses in 2023, down to a positive of 30-odd billion naira. And of course, the transparency that goes with that. Because you see, for investors, nobody is looking to come and risk and lose his money. Okay, and I think much of what we've been able to accomplish so far has come with that consistency and transparency, which gives confidence to those who are going to invest that nothing is hidden. The differentials between the rates literally vanished and down to a bare minimum. So it's easier for people who perhaps were on the sidelines in the past to now come in and do their business. And when I talk about explaining and communication, there's something that is very important, because this is something that tends to come up, has been coming up more recently with respect to the dependence of Nigeria on oil reserves, and I beg your pardon, on oil. And really to say that trajectory, if you look at the numbers, especially with respect to our current account surpluses, you see that whole trajectory has begun to change. Changed considerably. Even the sort of things I have been talking about of recent with respect to inflows from the diaspora, international remittances, that has gone up quantumly. Importation of oil, we all know that has gone down. And really and truly, we can continue to, if we take a hard dive at a lot of these numbers, you'll find out that the diversification is gradually beginning to seep in, and less dependence on oil as we were several years ago, which in itself helps to moderate volatility. And if you look at what happened recently, when the issue of tariffs came up and the concern about oil prices going down and the impact on countries like Nigeria, you'll see that, relatively speaking, we had a moderate effect. Okay, that's not just as a result of what I've just said, but also the fact that the central bank itself had created a lot of resilience and had created buffers, and there was more confidence in a more transparent and open market.
Let me come over to the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Technology. Could you perhaps elaborate on government's efforts to scale up digital connectivity and widen access to digital infrastructure and services across the country, also taking into cognizance affordability and price?
The sector is probably the largest beneficiary of the reforms that the President and our CME, our Minister of Budget and Planning, and of course the governors of CBN have put in place and religiously followed over the last nearly 2 years. Because if you look at the performance of that sector, of course, we know for us to truly help Nigeria to drive the level of productivity we want to see, shared prosperity as well, that we must continue to invest in digital infrastructure. And this is a sector that has been clamoring for increase in tariff for more than 10, 11 years. In fact, we've seen that in the last 3 years, the FDI to the sector has gone down significantly. So the companies have not been investing in digital infrastructure. And last year, because of the reform, we saw a significant growth. So if you look at the numbers, for instance, in Q1 2023, FDI to our sector was about $22 million in Q1 2023. In 2024, we had close to 200 million just in Q1 2024. And we saw that growth continued in Q2 into Q3 and Q4 as well. And what we've now seen is, because of the openness of this government, when I came in, the biggest companies in the sector came to me, and they had about 3 or 4 requests. One is the need for them to consider increase in tariff. The second one is the need for the government to declare all digital infrastructure as critical national infrastructure. And the third one was around tax. Now, when you look at all those 3 things, the first thing I said to them is that you're in business because all these 3 things this administration will actually handle. And all those 3 things have been completed. We allowed, through a thorough study, for tariff to go the right way, balancing cost and affordability, of course, and the need for the sustainability of the sector. The second thing the president did in August 2024 was declaring all digital infrastructure as critical national infrastructure. Today, I can announce to you, I think we saw the numbers from MTN and Airtel just a few weeks ago, and they're all smiling to the bank. We've also seen from what we are tracking that there's currently orders for telecommunications equipment that is worth over $1 billion that has been placed. And we're expecting some of those equipment to start to come into the country by June, July, where we expect that the quality of connectivity in the country will go up significantly. This is confirmed order. And remember, these are companies that have not spent significantly on infrastructure for many years. But because of what the government is doing, not only are they becoming profitable, they're also investing in the country. And we're talking about $1 billion that doesn't take into consideration the fact that the government also understands that the gap that is there that we must fill in digital infrastructure cannot be left to the private sector, which is why this administration is now investing about $2 billion in fiber optic network, about 90,000 kilometers of fiber optic network across the country, of which, of course, the World Bank is leading with almost $500 million. That same project. We should give them a round of applause for the bold step, actually. But beyond that as well, with the support of the CME and the president, the country also recognized that there's about 8% of our people that are not connected to any form of telecommunications infrastructure. And that's a significant number. You know, we're talking about close to 20 million people that are currently not connected in any way, shape, or form, not even the quality. And we've taken the decision that as a government, we will invest in about 7,000 towers In fact, we're going to launch the first pilot of those towers before the end of the month, somewhere in Abuja, where there's about 5,000 people currently with poor access to telecommunication service. We'll come to Plateau as well. We will launch the pilot of that project. But beyond that as well, as a government, we've recognized that not only digital infrastructure is required to truly allow the sector to help power the growth that we want to see. The workforce that is also required in the country to power the growth is an important ingredient for driving that growth we want to see, which is why one of the first projects we started as far back as October 2023 was the largest technology talent accelerator in the world. There's no country at the minute that is training 3 million technology talents. No one single country.
Over to the governor. For the governor, of course, you're representing not just Plateau State, but even your colleagues. So much has been said about the removal of PMS subsidy, FX rate unification, improved revenue administration, which we saw Dr. Alex highlighted, that has expanded fiscal space. That means for you and your colleagues, you are taking more money back to your state. What are you doing with the more monies you are getting on FAC? And please don't even rehash to me that inflation is eating into that money. Like a few governors tell me. Please tell me something different.
Yes, it's true that there has been increased revenue to the states. There's no question about that. But you cannot also avoid the other side of the story, that purchasing power has also declined. This is a reality. But that is not an excuse. I'm glad that the NDU, in talking about the way forward, mentioned the need for more spending and better spending. And I think this is what we're doing on a peer review basis. And I'm glad the DG of the Governors Forum is here. For example, we have tried to strengthen in our own even IGR mechanism. When we took over in Plateau State, for example, we were doing 800 million a month. I'm glad I can tell you now that we're doing 3 billion a month. And the key, again, to improving IGR is investment. And so we're investing in where we think we have competitive advantage. For us on the plateau, the agri sector is key. Our budget in 2024 was about 3 billion. This year we tried to increase it to about 12 billion to see how we can develop the value chain across the agri sector. We were one of the first states after the president created the Ministry of Livestock Development to also create a similar ministry in our state, because we have competitive advantage in the livestock sector. One of the key components of macroeconomic policy that perhaps needed to be addressed in the NDU is the impact of insecurity on the macroeconomy, because it is one of the critical factors that is diverting funds that we would have put into critical investments and infrastructure. We are having to spend a lot to deal with the challenges of insecurity. This is something that we need to address holistically as a nation, because it's not just peculiar to one state. But like I said, despite the challenges, we sought this job, we campaigned for it, so there are no excuses. And I think that the biggest thing that we are trying to sell to the Nigerian public, at least from the plateau perspective, is hope, which the NDU, I think the totality of the NDU that I heard this morning is that we are on the right track, and we need to give Nigerians hope. What have we done to be able to address the challenges of the vulnerable? We are making sure that we give subsidies in the agri sector, while we are trying to introduce technology to be able to expand the agri economy. We are also looking at how to be able to subsidize inputs in that sector. One of the significant steps we have taken on the plateau is also to come up with a more, what we thought is a more inclusive way of cash transfer, which we did in the transport sector. By the statistics at my disposal, what we are doing, moving about 8,000 passengers a day. In effective terms, the subsidies we are providing on our transport services translates to about 39,000 per individual that is patronizing that sector. We've also tried to collaborate with the Nigerian Railway Corporation. We've been able to revive train services within the city to move goods and persons. It's costing us a lot, but we thought that that is part of taking care of the vulnerable. Of course, human capital development is key. There is no way we would improve the economy without a competent manpower. But again, school fees are high, students are indigent, while we are bringing in, thank God for the student loan program, we also have to improve our scholarships, remuneration that we pay to our students, while reducing school fees in our tertiary institutions. So we are subsidizing a lot in the social sector, education and health. These are things that except you see the statistics, you won't know the impact that it's making. But beyond that, we are also relating with the Rural Electricity Agency to improve electricity supply, particularly to vulnerable communities that have no access to electricity. And we thought that that is the way to go, because without electricity, many businesses cannot function. We are making definite investments. Last year, we had a glut in the poultry section, where we had to now be able to mop up the eggs from the government side and feed students. I think these are part of the investments we are making for the vulnerable. We are trying to be as inclusive as we can, giving attention to gender issues so that we can be able to carry everybody along. So in a nutshell, yes, there is increased revenue, but purchasing power has dropped. I give you a typical example. I had to complete a bridge that was started way back in 2012. At that time, the contract sum was about 4 billion. About 70% of the work had been done. But to complete the bridge, because of the challenges of purchasing power, we had to cough out another 6 billion to finish the 30%. Now, these are the challenges. So it's about responsible spending. While in terms of, yes, the size of inflow has increased, we have to show responsibility, show discretion in trying to manage public expenditure, that we get our priorities right, reduce the wastages. And basically what we've done in IGR improvement is to block the loopholes, basically, while trying to see how we can improve the situation of the SMEs. Because if these SMEs are not functioning well, our revenue base cannot also rise up. So I hope I have not made an excuse.
I think we should come over to private sector, because the core of all of this that we're talking about, and a lot of us are private sector people in the room, and we have the MD of UAC Foods here representing that sector. Your company, of course, represents a vital segment of Nigeria's food processing industry. What specific reforms or interventions will create the conditions to scale for growth as well as expanded job creation? At least you are not a government person. Tell us the way it is.
The first thing that I think we need to do in helping us to be able to create jobs, because jobs, it's easy to do cash transfers, but I can do those cash transfers more sustainably if I create jobs. The cash transfers are now going to be linked directly to productivity. So the first thing that I would like to talk about is a transparent long-term policy framework. What I hear from the monetary and fiscal side is a long-term view. So I hear 2030. I hear $1 trillion. But we need to be able to see what policy frameworks are going to be put in place now that will still be in place by 2030, so that I can use those policy frameworks to plan. If you have given me a target that you want me to grow the economy to 1 trillion, and you have given me the time that you want that to happen, but I need to know what the government is going to do and what the government is not going to do. We've seen situations in the country where we would say this is it, but in 6 months, you ban this, you ban that, you create a new list. Then we don't know. If I don't know if my current inputs are going to get on the list in the short to medium term, most likely I'm not going to invest. And the simple reason is because I don't want to put $50 million, $80 million, $200 million in a factory, and then my major input gets on a banned list. I think that is the first thing I'm asking for, that we have a transparent, long-term policy framework. The second one is exports. There are a lot of things that countries in the world have done. We're not the first country to be a small growing economy. I still consider us small because we have a very huge potential for growth. There are many things that good economies have done that we can look at and adapt and tweak to our situation. But I don't see that urgency when I talk to policymakers, when I talk to regulators. I don't see that urgency. When you approach government agencies and you say, I have seen this opportunity, there are 27 countries of the world that we have run trials in, and this particular product can be exported. Could you give us this license? Could you give us that license? Could you give us this license? You are supposed to be working on a target. Remember, the physical and monetary side have given a target, $1 trillion by 2030. So you're working towards ensuring that your company contributes their quota to that. I don't see the speed. I don't see the urgency on the government side when it comes to things like this. And I'll give you one example. In 2023 and 2024, we developed a product using a grandma's recipe. And we put this product in Canada, in Ghana, in Ivory Coast, in Australia, in the US, in the UK. It's a product that when we priced in Nigeria, we could sell that product for 200 naira. But in the UK, we could sell it easily for £1. Imagine the difference between 200 naira and £1. We submitted application to register the product in October. And we have gone through endless visitation, endless documentations to be able to get this product. If the two parties are working together, what I see is the kind of urgency that we work with, the kind of speed that we work with is what we expect to be on the government side as well. I don't see that urgency on the government side. Power is something that we have not spoken enough about. You cannot run anything. You cannot run any country without power. The focus is right. We should focus on gas. We have talked about hydro. We have talked about solar. We know how difficult these things are, but many of us are now moving to gas. I am able to save 65% of what I typically spend in the years past, now that I have converted some of our factories to gas. Factories to gas, trucks to gas, vans to gas. Gas generation is something that we need to focus on, especially when you look at the fact that it is now possible to bring in gas generators. A party brings in gas generator, leases those gas generators to you. So the amount of cash that each of these companies needs to invest to be able to get their companies run on gas. I have also worked with engineering companies, big global engineering companies, and they have shown us that most of our machines actually run a lot better when they run on gas versus when they run on diesel. You cannot steal gas. One of the biggest, if you come into manufacturing, one of the biggest players in manufacturing, if not the biggest player in manufacturing in Africa, is Alhaji. Aliko will tell you that one of the most difficult things to control when it comes to theft is diesel. Immediately you buy, just write it off because the propensity for it to get stolen is very high. But now, nobody steals gas.
Okay.
I would talk, just maybe the last one is, two last things. First one is access to risk capital. Risk capital. The risk part is what I would underline. If you want to grow, profit is the reward that we get for taking risks. A lot of us are looking for almost risk-free investment, risk-free assets to invest into. I don't think we can grow without risk capital. I'm going to see the DG of BOI, because when you approach BOI now, in fact, from the gate, they're already telling you, we don't have money, we don't have money, we don't have money. You need risk capital to be able to invest. And finally, if there's something I want to say here, it's the fact that we need a culture of excellence in Nigeria. We need, where a people that seems to be happy with, let's manage it.
Yes, mediocrity.
I don't want to say mediocrity because, the honorable ministers are here. The countries that have grown the way we want to grow, they did it by promoting progress over perfection. But that perfection still remains the objective. We need national culture of excellence, that we continue to get better. The countries that we buy mobile phones from today, if you look at the way they progressed, if you bought a phone in 2008, 2010, 2012, you couldn't choose the phone because just the ringing tone would fill the whole room. But now almost every phone is made from that country. Let's create that culture that we continue to get better and better. That's what this building momentum is about for me. It's that we can create a national culture of excellence that we continue to get better and better and better till and even beyond this $1 trillion that we're looking at. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Finance, how you are interpreting what the MD of USC Foods Limited is asking, as well as HM, I would like you also to speak around the issue of fuel subsidy removal and the Federation not yet fully realizing the benefits of it. I spoke earlier on about NNPC Limited continue to offset historical arrears. So I would like you to speak on why we are still not harnessing the full fiscal benefit and perhaps your reaction to what MD is talking about. When he was talking, what came to my mind also was the first policy, Nigeria First policy that the president launched, was it last week?
Yes.
So how does all this also tie into what the MD said?
Thank you very much, Nancy. Let me just refer us back to the heat map and the fiscal policy. Everything that is either green or orange, which means on its way. Everything that's red is being done. And that is where the issue of, and I thought that Mr. Oloyede was going to refer to that, the emphasis on data, the emphasis on revenue generation, and ensuring that what is due to government comes into government's coffers. There's emphasis on all that, using technology, using the latest, making sure that we have the up-to-date data and so forth. And it was the governor of Central Bank that said that we should read. I'm not sure that Mr. Oloyede has read what the governor has written. I'm not sure, because when you look at his narrative on inflation, his narrative on the exchange rate, and so forth, it is a bit out. But what I would say, Mr. Oloyede, you're a very good advocate, because what you are saying at the end of the day, that the government is on the right track. You talked about the framework. We have the National Development Plan, we have the medium-term economic framework, and we, of course, have the annual budget. But over and above that, we do have an environment that is giving confidence to investors. And let me give an example. You talked about, the government assisting investors. If you look at Lekki Port, huge investment, I think about almost 20 meters depth, the largest and most modern port in Nigeria. It will be a stranded transaction, if not for last week's
First of all, let
at
me
the Federal
congratulate each and every one of you
council meeting
for making it
for
through
the seventh axial road
what has been a
that will
very
go north, straight north from where the port is, instead of going west through VI. And that is a public-private dialogue and partnership, government and the private sector looking at an investment, seeing how best to protect it, agreeing it together, and government putting down the basic infrastructure, as you say. It's I call it a struggle over the spoils. The subsidy has been removed. And so what was going in subsidy, which after a while NNPC ended up paying, is now flowing, available to flow to the federation account. NNPC is saying, well, there was some backlog that is owed, so it's basically a conversation, it's a reconciliation, and it's a forensic audit. But at the end of the day, we'll make sure that what is due to the federation account, that is, whose beneficiaries are the federal, state, and local governments, and FCT, will come to the federation account. So it's a work in progress.
Governor Cardoso, last question for you. Access to finance is very important for inclusive growth, just like MDUA Foods have noted. Your question is, do you still concur with the assessment that maintaining an orthodox policy stance and curbing inflation is the most effective path to improving credit access? And beyond this, what other complementary measures are being considered to enhance financial sector efficiency and that credit intermediation?
The answer to whether I still concur, the answer is yes, yes, and yes again. And you're right. That's perhaps what the mantra in which I have stood since I became CBN governor. Yes, without a doubt. In fact, dare I say that that is the only type of monetary policy, orthodox monetary policy. Dare I say so. And of course, as you can see, it is bringing out, we are seeing the results of it. And as I said earlier, quite frankly, I think the bottom line of all this is timing. We believe that if we continue on that path, after a period of time, as prices begin to moderate, which they have started to, okay, albeit maybe not at the pace that many would have liked, but as that continues to go, then the rest follows. Interest rates begin to come down, and it becomes a lot more palatable for everybody, especially the less privileged. However, that is not the only mechanism. By no stretch of imagination is that the only mechanism. We need to ensure that we have a strong, robust financial system that is fit for purpose, and that is the reason why, as you may know, the recapitalization exercise, which is very much progressing at a satisfactory pace. That is also something that we are very much honed into. Of course, we recognize the fact that digitalization is key towards financial inclusion, and I can tell you that right now, one of the things we are looking at is how we are going to support fintechs, payment systems in particular, to ensure that they can accomplish their overall objectives, because we have very, very good, very viable fintechs which are unicorns all over the continent, and we must, as regulators, support them in their efforts to ensure that they meet their objectives. And we're going to be holding a summit very shortly, and the results of that summit will be made public. And those who, of course, there'll be limited space, but those who can come should come. And we believe that having all the different participants in the room and understanding the issues better will help us to jumpstart some of the issues we have with respect to financial inclusion and the exclusion of the less privileged, and ensure that we reach out as far and wide as possible, because as been said earlier, a situation where the economy is growing and we are leaving others behind is certainly not an acceptable model.
Thank you, Governor. And it's a wrap on today's edition of the program. That does it. The critical conversations that we had, and I hope that you've taken a few notes from what was discussed earlier. Like I always say, be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. I will see you all again next time. May not be at this location, maybe perhaps in my usual location. I am Nancy Naji. Bye for now. Thank you for making it up to this minute watching the video. Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. Like, follow all our other social media platforms where we keep you up to speed with fantastic interviews, as well as markets, personal finance, business, and economy information. This is the best place to be. I'll see you all again in the next video.